Hi, welcome back to Sovereign FM. My name is Bianca Beck. I'm the Middle East and Mauritius Marketing Manager for the Sovereign Group. Today, I'm joined by two guest speakers, Zana Musa, who is our Operations Director for the Sovereign Group and part of our Middle East team, and also Manpreet Kaur, who is the Director of Licensing and Regulatory Compliance at Neolegal. Ladies, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi,
Hi.
Bianca. Nice to see you.
Today's conversation I want to base around virtual assets. It's a real up and coming topic, and I think it's becoming more and more established. And when I was speaking to Zana about this topic, she's our go-to internally when it comes to these type of inquiries from our clients or inquiries internally from our team. Virtual assets, cryptocurrencies, tokenization. It's definitely part of an emerging conversation in the UAE. And when we were chatting on this topic, she said Manpreet is a perfect person to join us as part of this conversation. So I'd like to start just like how the two of you became connected, because from my understanding, it actually was through this industry, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So I made my move to the UAE in May 22, and Zana was one of the first consultants who kind of reached out directly saying, we're getting a lot of inquiries about what VARA are doing. Who's VARA? What are you doing? And that's how we kind of became connected. And we've been in touch for the last 4 years, supporting clients, brainstorming, talking about the good parts, the bad parts, the frustrations. And we've been very much ecosystem partners in that sense for the last 4 years.
And for somebody who doesn't know VARA, what does that mean?
Sure.
Assuming that not everybody knows the lingo here.
The lingo. So VARA is the Virtual Asset Regulatory Authority. They're based in Dubai. So they have the mandate to regulate all virtual asset activities within the Emirate of Dubai.
Okay. And so during the very early stages of virtual assets in the UAE, when it was still very much being defined, what did it feel like to be part of like those very early stages of virtual assets, regulation for virtual assets in the UAE?
From my perspective, it was a very unique moment. And I think I'm lucky and we are lucky to be part of it because it looks very different now. The market wasn't clear yet, but that provided for a lot of opportunities. We were just going out of COVID in that point, 2022, where VARA was kind of still an enigma for everyone. It was there was a sandbox. I remember when I got inquiries from clients, we were trying to figure out how to navigate. What does it mean? What are the requirements? The framework wasn't out yet. But it did create a lot of traction. And I think this is what UAE does. They just look forward. Even in that time of COVID, when everyone was just like focused on recovery, they were focused on the future. And I think that's why this ecosystem looks like this now. It was really for me interesting to be part of that. It was really learning with the clients. I wasn't trying to make a shift into crypto market. It was more like we had at the time clients who were asking questions, and everyone was just so curious. And I did, by being in UAE for so long, I did have contacts throughout regulators, and we managed to kind of figure out from our side how to apply for the sandbox, how to kind of be part of that. So it was really nice to see from the beginning till now, the whole journey.
Evolution has been phenomenal. I echo a lot of what Zana says there, because when I moved here, I had no idea what virtual assets were. So I came from a tech program management, project management background, and the opportunity came. VARA were looking for somebody to join the team. And at that point, VARA had just announced what they call a minimal viable product program, basically. So that was a subset of about approximately 50 companies who are known as VASPs, so virtual asset service providers, that would take part in this MVP phase. So that was like a pilot of the regulations, but we called them conditions at the time. And everybody, along with the VASPs, the ecosystem, the lawyers, the consultants, the banks, VARA was also working out what these regulations are going to look like. So we launched the MVP, but in the background, there was a team, a really dedicated team that were working very hard to draft the regulations that we see today. And they've evolved twice since we've seen them launch in Feb 23. And it was a really interesting, exciting phase. One, you're a sponge because you're learning so much, not just about virtual assets, crypto, but the UAE. I've never worked here before. The culture, the working ways, how being part of a semi-government organization, but you're a startup in a semi-government organization was really interesting. So I learned a lot about company formation, working with great organizations like PwC, Dubai World Trade Center, DLA Piper. These were some of the key people that were in the room drafting regulations. And working with the VARA team very much to drive the regulations to launch. And we saw a very uncertain, unclear, what is this? A lot of questions. As we were moved from kind of March 22, when the announcement was made that VARA's formed, to February 23, the regulations are out, we started to see a lot of traction in the market. We had a lot of great players, global interest. And it was very much in demand. It was like everybody wanted to know who's VARA. So for us, I think, like personally for myself, I was just a sponge, learning, trying to understand what's crypto, what's virtual asset, what's Bitcoin, what's on-chain, off-chain, what are these wallets. There was just so much to learn. And I'm always honest, and I always say this, I still don't know everything. And I'm still not the SME in the room.
And the same, I think, from the regulatory side and also from the consultants and professionals and also client side. I think it was like a joint learning process and a learning journey where we were building, understanding together the market and the regulation. And that's why it made it so unique. I don't now things are, and it's always good to see things evolve, being more structured, clear. But on the other side, I don't see that engagement on that level anymore, because there is clear expectations for every process, that discussion, that that opportunity that even mid-sized VASPs had at that moment to directly engage with the regulator was unreal.
It was really unusual.
Exactly.
So
it was never seen
like
before.
An open door policy.
It felt like that.
Honestly, open door, WhatsApp, email.
WhatsApp. Can I set up a company? Yeah, sure.
It was really different for me. I'd come from an organization. I'd worked at KPMG in the UK, and you have a lot of red tape, client engagement, but it was very much everybody was coming at you from different angles. Leads. We want to set up. Everybody was coming from you at different pathways, like different engagement routes, and now definitely like the team, they are a lot more, engagement with them is a lot more structured, and it's it comes through funneled processes. They've got great processes in place now, but in the beginning it was a bit of a free fall. And I remember those days, and I was like, everyone was like, this is so unusual, we don't get this engagement with our other regulators globally, particularly the global companies that had been through other regulatory processes. They're like, we never sat in a room with the FCA like this, we've never, this is amazing, we get great information, we hear it from the horse's mouth, so to speak. So that was very different. That was very excitable, and everybody could speak to VARA. It was very much come and ask us. It was, and I think that's one of the reasons why VARA did get that attraction and why everybody was so engaged, because we were so approachable.
Yes, that's such an interesting, like, looking at the early foundations. So from that perspective, did you both feel like you proactively aligned your careers in a space like this, or did it just kind of happen?
For me, it happened, right? I don't think even to this day, we are not industry focused as a company, as a CSP, global CSP. We work in many industries. I never planned, like I said, to venture fully into the crypto. It was more client driven and also curiosity driven. It was a space that I knew it will boom here. And I had the opportunity to be a part of it very early on, and I took it with the mindset, which Manpreet mentioned, to learn. And I was lucky with my clients. They were very hands-on.
Yes.
I remember even the first kind of a requirement Excel list that we got from Manpreet, very in-depth one, but it was an Excel sheet with so many requirements that we had to drill into, analyze from different perspectives. And I learned throughout this process together with the clients. Now this looks different, like VARA has a portal and all of that, but we had that opportunity to engage also with regulators to understand where are they coming from, what are they expecting from each like section of the requirement list and the checklist. So for me, that was how I went into that space. Later on, of course, there were many more players coming into the market, providers specializing in this industry. And as we always put clients first, we kind of specialized in more support on the operation side for the clients. Of course, with a very great understanding on the licensing process. And that helped me from that early stage. But where we kind of work with clients more now on is on that governance side, operational side, corporate secretary services. So we also I see now more what happens after the licensing. So which is kind of giving me another element and layer, because I saw the licensing parts very closely. Now I'm seeing
operational side,
operational, then all of these VAS that came out of the MVP and or they went straight into the FM, like the fully regulated program. Now are being licensed and they are operating the market. So that's kind of my side of it.
And Manpreet, before you kind of answer, also, you know, how did that shape your approach to things, and, you know, being part of a unique group of people that essentially led the industry or introduced the industry? How has that approach changed your, like, what the career part first, but how has that developed, you know, as from like, it's so interesting to hear Zana say her first interaction was like an Excel spreadsheet and now it's moved to full portal.
Career-wise, for me, I still remember one of the directors interviewing me and saying, this is going to be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity and it's going to change your career trajectory. And I was always excited by things like that. I like doing something new, something different. I get bored very easily. And I thought, why not? And also I moved country at the same time. So there was a few big factors going on, life-changing elements.
We'll do everything life-changing all
lots
at once.
Stuff. Let's move. Let's start a new job, a new industry. Career-wise, it completely changed my career. I was very much in program, project management, technology, moved me into digital assets. And with VARA, my role kind of evolved from being very reactive, whatever was needed. I worked on a bit of everything from licensing to the business development engagement with all the VASPs to marketing, HR, recruitment. I think there was every role in some way I touched on, to a point. I had the privilege of sitting in the room when at the initial phases when regs were being drafted and things like that. So it was amazing opportunity. But then I got to the point where I was like, I prefer structure and rigor, and wanted to go do that. And what I found was I had these amazing relationships with the ecosystem. So the banking providers, insurance, audit, technology, and the VASPs themselves. And they were like, hey, Manpreet. And I was always that person that would respond to WhatsApp. I'm the first one to reply to an email and a WhatsApp. So it was kind of like, how do I take my skills and what I've learned and continue with that in the industry? And the opportunity came to kind of launch licensing, regulatory licensing. And with Neolegal, essentially my role is that I take clients through the end-to-end journey. So as a firm, as a law firm, we do all of the drafting and we work with the clients to develop and draft their full application throughout the full phase. And we support post-licensing as well, supervision. Like Sovereign, we've been able to add that on now as another part of the process. But my role is to really handhold the client. So I do all of the engagement. I will take them through the process. I will be that point of contact with them and the regulators, and literally be an extension of their team. So we're kind of fully accountable as we go through. I keep them all on track. There's deadlines, there's timelines that everyone has to do. And it really leans very well to my personality and my skills and stuff. And things that I genuinely enjoy doing. But the changes for me was that seeing it from, like, Zana said, an Excel spreadsheet that we were working off, to becoming a full set of regulations, SharePoint, online form for the first phase, which is the IDQ phase, to now a full-fledged portal is amazing. And I really like the portal. It makes my life so much easier being on the other side. So like version control and everything like that. It just makes it so much cleaner having that first phase now on a portal.
Yeah.
And it means you're all going in the same way.
Yeah.
I think the challenge with it before for the regulator was applications coming in from multiple channels, managing that, and, you know, mailboxes. It's not easy. The volume, the interest and demand is so high.
Yeah.
And, you know, everybody comes in at a different maturity level as well. Some companies will have been so formed that they knew exactly what they were doing, what they were applying for. They really understood the regulations. But others were like, hey, I've got this idea, I've got this product, and I want to get a VARA license.
Yeah.
Almost like it was like a designer label stamp that they wanted. Like, you know, you stamp your Louis Vuitton passport holder every country you go. And it's like, there was a lot of like misinformation, lack of education and knowledge out there as well. So for me, the technology having moved so far forward, and also just the sheer kind of preparation now companies do before they go there to the regulator has moved leaps and bounds.
And speaking to you guys as ladies, like how you were part of this kind of like growing industry environment, what other, do we see a lot of women in this industry now? And was there at those very early fundamental stages of developing?
There were some really key players at the beginning, and still very much so. A great example is Deepa Rajakarban, MD of VARA. She really led the way, and honestly, an absolute honor to have worked with her. Is one of the key females in the industry. Christy, who heads up DLA Piper, the engagement with VARA. Again, there were some really great, very knowledgeable, very forward-thinking female leaders in the space, and were often speaking about the regulations, their firms that the VASPs they work for, etc.
Yeah,
this is one of the topics we discussed recently, Zana and I. We're seeing less and less female representation on the stage, though. So a lot of events happen in the industry, and we've seen less female representation on stages talking about their roles or crypto. So I don't know if perhaps roles have changed now as the regulations have evolved, roles have evolved, people have moved into different, more strategic roles maybe. But I feel like there is still a lot more to be done for female representation in this space. There's a lot of great females working behind the scenes, working with VASPs to get them licensed. It'd be great to see them at the forefront as well.
Yeah.
I think you're spot on that. Like, I feel like there's a lot of females behind the scenes. And if we compare, like we started the conversation about these early stages, and I think there was much more inclusivity there, just because it was so new, it was early stage, everyone was just kind of very excited to be part of it. Whereas now that there is more structure, clarity, and opportunity, like you said, there is just so much demand in the market that you actually need specialized firm like Neolegal to just work with VASPs on that specific niche industry. I see the kind of space a bit more territorial right now. It may be a controversial view, but being here more than a decade and kind of part of different networking business groups, I feel like now, and maybe it might change, and I hope it does, it feels a bit more territorial. I know when I'm invited to events or I'm there is already a bit more selectiveness, and it is not as it was before, very high.
It's not as open door as it
exactly
was. And I follow on from Zana's point there, is that going to any kind of networking event, I think, can be quite intimidating.
Yes.
But when you're going in and you're one of the few representatives of your gender, it's even harder. You know, there's been often, I've sat in a room, I had a conversation with a colleague recently. She was part of a round table. She was one of two females, and she was literally only asked one question, you know, but she has amazing experience, knowledge, and, you know, amazing. And I've worked with her on a number of occasions. There's great female founders I'm finding in the space. So one example is TCAE Mina. Suzanne Ismail is training and working with VASPs, but also training compliance and MLRO specialists in the virtual asset industry. And, you know, it's great to see people like that coming out forward and kind of leading the way, but it'd be great to see more, and it'd be great to see it being more like less territorial. There's so much opportunity in the UAE and in Dubai itself.
Is that a protective reaction, the fact that it's become more? territorial?
It could be because now it is a whole industry, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's a whole. It's very
Mm.
competitive. It became very competitive, then inclusive, kind of.
Yeah.
And of course, everyone wants to portray themselves as they are the sole specialist, right?
Yeah.
And there is no need for that. Like, I think that there is just so much work for everyone in this space.
Room to share,
And
basically.
exactly. And I think that more collaboration and more support. And it also depends, like, I think females tend to kind of be just focused on their work more than kind of pushing there aggressively and trying to put themselves out there. So maybe we also from our side need to be a bit more pushed and encouraged. I know Manpreet and I discussed this podcast for months, and we were like all just dragged into our day-to-day jobs and never did it. And if we didn't have you, to be honest, pushing me and laughing, how you guys doing?
Come on, Zana.
It's always like, okay, we need to prepare more. We need to kind of bring something extraordinary to the table. But actually, our experiences are unique. We don't have to do anything much. We don't have to be
just being ourselves and being honest
and sharing
your experience with it. Yeah,
there'll definitely be people that will be able to relate to what we're saying. There's been that person in the room where they're like, oh my God, and you're like feeling intimidated because it is competitive. There is a lot of demand it's become an industry. It's obviously now driving competition as well, right? And we can see that's happening. It's a trend. It's happened as you evolve from a new industry to a full-fledged industry.
Yeah.
But what I think people need to remember is there's a lot of opportunity and you can find your own little niche area with those opportunities.
So when we look at the regulation side of it, you've got VARA, which is specific to Dubai, is my understanding.
Correct.
There's a UAE level up regulator as well. So how come Dubai felt the need to create its own virtual assets regulation? Where did that come from? And also, we've talked about early stages, but I want to talk a little bit now about the progress. Why was there a need to move from those initial MVP stage?
So what you have here in the UAE is you have federal level.
Yes.
And then you have the emirate level. So for example, Abu Dhabi, they have ADGM. In Dubai, you've got VARA that focuses on virtual assets, but you've got DIFC. So VARA does not regulate the DIFC. DIFC is a self-regulating free zone. So Dubai is made up of free zones. You've got then an example, another one is Ras Al Khaimah have RAK as a free zone. It's not a regulator though. So Dubai came about with VARA purely simply because globally, other jurisdictions, the UK, Japan, China, everybody was trying to, Singapore, were trying to form virtual asset regulations.
Yeah.
And what we were seeing was they were adding on virtual asset regulations to standard traditional finance regulations. Dubai said, we're going to do this. They announced it, the law was passed, VARA was formed. Irrelevant of it being at a federal level or a local level, it happened at a Dubai level. Then what we saw was central bank, once VARA transitioned from minimal viable product program into full market, which was February 23, once the regs came out, they transitioned those 50 players into the full market regulations. And then also everybody that entered post-February entered at the full market point. And the reason for the evolution was because that was just a subset. It was always meant to be, a placeholder to get people to become engaged, learn from them. So we were learning from the VAS as the regulations were being drafted.
So is that why we have the 50? Is that why it's 50?
Yeah, it was like just a testing phase.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be honest, I'm really sure it was
it was a testing
it might have
environment
even
for both.
Yeah.
It was not a free kind of space for VAS to do what they want. It was still a very structured and regulated place for VAS to test their models, present the models to VARA.
And regulation to learn and all these things to develop.
And test VARA's regulations for VARA as well. So it was both sides. It was a test, very controlled testing environment, then transitioned into the full market.
When the full market regulations launched, then central bank came out with their payments piece. So payment stays with central bank, which is federal. And then we have ESCA, who had announced that they were licensing on the virtual asset side, but the mandate, they've given the mandate to Dubai, VARA for Dubai, basically, but ESCA regulate the rest of the UAE when it comes to virtual assets. And they've recently, I think we're talking like a couple of weeks, maybe, CMA.
Yes,
So
I heard about this change.
That's the new change when it comes to a federal level. There is a lot more alignment with ESCA and VARA than when VARA was first formed. Same with central bank. There is a lot more alignment with the federal regulators and the local regulators now.
So is that kind of what's changed then fundamentally from MVP stage to full licensing? Or is there other stuff that's happened
there's a
in
lot.
there in terms of change?
Oh, okay. Yeah, so with the MVP, like these subset of requirements, I can't remember. I'm not going to. Must have been like 100 plus requirements. Now you're like more like 100 and 200 requirements. Wow. You have really structured. So VARA is made up of 4 core rule books that everybody has to comply with. Okay. So you got company and organization, technology, you've got risk and compliance, and then you've got market conduct, and then you have your activity specific. So if I'm an exchange, I'm going to be also applying the exchange rule book. If I'm a custody provider, it's the custody one. If it's broker dealer, it's going to be broker dealer. If it's issuance, it's category 1 issuance. So you have a lot more to comply with, right? And each FASP has to demonstrate they comply with every single requirement before they're awarded their license.
Okay. So not so much that open door that it sounded like initially.
And there's a lot more kind of vetting as well.
So, but initially as well, it was, like I said, very structured, but it was an open door on discussing how to comply with this structure that you have in place. Like, just to kind of put in context, like Manpreet described, we have like 5 regulators that regulate in one way or another virtual assets in the UAE. But it all started, like ADGM did start with the framework first. But when it comes to but ADGM and DIFC are financial free zones that are separate, like have a complete separate organ and how they work and how they regulate from the UAE. VARA was the first one who, for the UAE, actually pushed the regulation. At that time, where all the other global players were just waiting, how? And no one wanted to take that bold move because everyone was looking at each other. The UAE made that move straight after COVID, where they said, and that kind of, and I can see that because for me, being in this industry for so long here, and everything here comes from the activities. So they have first created a regulator specific for a new asset class, activity-based driven. So all the regulation depends on your activity. And this is how generally UAE operates. Unlike, and I have to explain this to the clients, especially coming from common law territories where, in the UK company house, you can just register the company. And then later on, you can decide what the company wants to do. Here, first thing you need to understand and tell the regulators what is going to be your business activity. And that's how even the normal free zone and regulatory authorities work here. They scope your activity and then give you the requirements and regulation. And VARA took that good approach from the UAE and focused it on the new asset class. And that's why they became unique. And it made a boom because no other regulator has done this way.
And globally as well, they focused more on the product rather than the activity. So whereas VARA switched to activity focused.
How do companies basically even start, or the ones already operating? How are they assessed initially? And then how are they expected to operate?
So there's 2 kind of processes here, because you've got those that are completely new to the region and want to move in and get a VARA license. And then you've got the ones that are already here, the legacy VASPs. Now, the legacy VASPs, the way in which they were dealt with is that they were told, if you are doing any kind of virtual asset activity, you need to apply. And the process was they'd go through phase 1, which is the IDQ process, initial disclosure questionnaire. And they would provide a regulatory business plan, information about financials. They need to provide information about personnel, UBO, shareholders. There was significant information they would need to provide to VARA. VARA would assess, and if they were deemed to require a license, they would go into phase 2, which is the application process. If not, they were given what was called a no objection certificate, which meant that they're not conducting virtual asset activities, but if anything changes, the onus is on the VAS, the company, to inform VARA and then go through the full process. The new companies, how do they get involved? There's multiple ways VASPs still come to the region. One is they may be like, okay, we've now seen like our competitors, get licensed in Dubai. What's this all about? So they'll come through a service provider, could be a CSP, could be a law firm as well, a lot of law firms. And what like we do in this situation when it's a new company is we establish, who are you globally? Where are you in the world? What are you doing? What do you want to do here? Are you simply mirroring what you're doing, or are you going for a different activity altogether?
Similar to what Zana said about how important it is to distinguish
and that initial conversation, that initial phase is so important because you need to then go to phase 1, which is the initial disclosure questionnaire, which is on the VARA portal, VARA Connect portal now. And you have to disclose what name you want to be registered as. Do you want to operate under a different name? What are your activities, UBOs, shareholders, regulatory business plan that really details in detail what are you doing, market competitor analysis, why did you choose the region? It's like a full story almost that you're presenting to the regulator, and it's your first impression to the regulator. And the less holes they can poke, the better. So you need to be fully open, honest, and transparent. Now, a lot of global organizations don't have the rigor operationally that is expected by VARA. So there's a lot of change that happens. There's like a big change management process almost, because we will often get comments like, oh, but I didn't have to do this when I applied at so-and-so. And no, they're really asking this. And the fact is, VARA was here to stay with rigor, bringing strong compliance, strong governance to protect the market, ultimately, its consumers in the UAE. So the second phase, once you've gone through your first phase, you progress into your second phase, which is the development and the presentation of your policies and procedures. You're not just saying this is what we do. You're then also telling the regulator how you do it and how you will operationalize it, which is, I think, a bit of a different factor for a lot of VASPs when they're getting regulated elsewhere.
And do companies and investors underestimate
Hugely
this process?
Massively. Oh, we can just give you one person. One person cannot write all these policies and procedures because they don't apply to just one individual.
Yeah, we have to remember the VASPs by its nature, regardless, and that's how I've seen it, regardless of their size, they still operate under startup mindset, right?
Yeah. I see that a lot.
And that can be seen in a lot of areas of how they function.
Yeah.
And what VARA did well is, like Manpreet mentioned, they just don't want to, it's not about just seeing the policies.
Yeah.
It's about VARA making sure and having confidence that you understand how you will implement them.
Yeah.
And a lot of us don't think of that. They're just thinking
I want the license.
I want a license.
Good to go.
And I think that's one of the first kind of mistakes that I make. They don't think about operations because VARA always thinks about you being operating. What happens after when they give you the license.
Yeah.
And that part is where kind of the professionals come in. And a lot of time, I think we are seeing as policing the VASPs in sense of what we do, direct them in the, like, what you need to do, processes you need to follow, deadlines you need to meet, and audit trails. And for VASPs, I think that's why the industry is so big now, and it's fast evolving because they have that quick decision-making speed and all of that. But now that the industry is getting regulated, you need to fence it back a little bit and make sure it's kind of a good fusion between like the classical financial regulation and the new regulation of virtual assets.
At Neolegal, one thing we do is we almost do like a knowledge transfer to the VASPs in the early stages. So we will be educating them from day one and we take them on the journey of the full licensing process, but they're learning from us. Just really simple things like Zana said, like about the operational requirements. So we're really transparent from day one about operational requirements. What have you actually got to have on the ground here to actually operate? They're coming to me with 4 activities. 2 people is not enough to run a 4-activity VASP. Like you've got to have the right personnel on the ground. You need to demonstrate to the regulator that you have the right skill sets in-house to operate. Because VARA looking at, once you're getting licensed is a challenge. Don't get me wrong. It's not an easy process. But that's good because if you get through it, then you'll be able to sustain and operate the business once it's live. But it's simple things like they underestimate the costs of setting up still, the license costs. They don't understand that they're going to be supervised by VARA once they're licensed. So there's a whole supervision element to it. The right people paying the right people the right amount, because there is a lot of competition right now with compliance professionals. So we've seen the hike in hiring compliance professionals right now across VASPs, because obviously you want to hire somebody who understands VARA, who understands the process, but somebody who's also been approved, being pre-approved previously by the regulator, with VARA interview now. So there's a lot of misconceptions and misunderstandings, and it's more challenging when a virtual asset service provider has been through a different regulatory process in, be it
their home country or
their own country, and then when they have to go through it here. And I'm often the broken record going, no, but this is how it's got to be. If you want this license, you've got to go that extra mile.
And just to add on that, what I've seen quite often is they mix the requirements of the local license with the global, and especially the staff that is providing certain functions. VARA is very much for transparency, independency of roles, and clear governance when it comes to the entity they license. So getting them out of that mindset from the group, they're always mixing things that is happening in other subsidiaries or the group, because it is like that. It's they operate usually in a very hybrid model. They are everywhere in the world. Staff is everywhere. They're not connected to one place. Like we are, like classical, providers. You are in that place. You provide services for the specific jurisdiction. No, usually how they're set up internally is very fluid. And kind of ring fencing that and making sure that they understand when it comes to compliance and what they're going to be monitored on from VARA is on the local entity. They need to make sure everything is kind of done properly, and they cannot mix other entities, employees within that. So I just feel like that's where there is a lot of misconceptions, even in IDQ, where they submit and try to use kind of, okay, you can repurpose staff,
this business
blah, blah,
and it's like this, it's like
it's a lot of mix from what other subsidiaries do when it comes to tech, when it comes to services people, and kind of saying, okay, you need to have different, separate, independent operations, govern everything for this entity here.
Which is what you said about the education piece being so important from the onset. Does it, I mean, listening to how much is required, does it leave room for entrepreneurs and startups? Or are we more seeing now established businesses in the space coming in? Has that changed from...
There's room for entrepreneurs, definitely. Startups, yes, but startups with good backing. So being at their first round of funding is probably not the best step. But we've seen some startups go through the process and have done really well. They've got the right backing as they've gone through. I think definitely entrepreneurs, but bringing an entrepreneur on a compliance journey is quite challenging. The business, so bringing the business and compliance and legal together and tech is a really big mix. And even I would say marketing as well, right? Because they've all got a different lens on the business of what they want to do and what they want to achieve. Compliance and legal are constantly policing and trying to keep the business where they need to be. Business is running ahead because they've got great ideas, great ambitions. Marketing want to run with everything and they want to say the things. And obviously, as we know, VARA's got its marketing guidelines. And then you've got tech who do not put anything on paper. So more often than not, we find getting our clients, working with them, we work really closely with tech to help them draw out what they're doing onto paper, into diagrams, into flows that work. And that's one of the really unique points about Neolegal is we have technical expertise inside. As a law firm, it's not a typical skill set to have, but we have somebody who actually understands the full architecture of blockchain and how the processes and flows should work. And the thing is, for a startup, it sounds like a lot. So for them to have somebody who can think with a compliance, legal, marketing, business, sales, all these hats, I find I would still say it's still challenging for startups in the space. It's not impossible, but it is challenging.
It is challenging, I think, from everything you said. And also, let's be honest, when it comes to cost, like it is not cheap to obtain a VARA license. But it is, there is no criteria that you have to be when it comes to application in a certain stage of seniority, or you have to have a certain number of subsidiaries. You can be literally a startup with a great project and want to start proper with regulation. If you have the funding for that, you can still do it. It's not, there's nothing preventing you. But there is other options, and you always work with the clients to find the best way. You don't have to go straight your first step fully regulated. There's a lot of non-regulated activities when it comes to crypto space and blockchain. The MCC built a great crypto center. Even in the WTC, there are non-regulated activities. So you can start a bit maybe that, just to tap into the jurisdiction and market.
When they're like developing the technology,
Exactly.
because a lot of them use proprietary technology, and if they're not going to be actually operational doing a VA activity initially, there are other options they can look at. And DMCC Crypto Center is quite good because it has that whole ecosystem. It has the full kind of, they bring in like specialists, they run events. So somebody like a startup is really good in a place like that because they've got the whole incubator. And then I think DWTC also, they've got the incubator over there now as well. So some of the free zones have really placed themselves as all-encompassing environments for startups and entrepreneurs.
Exactly. And on the other side, we do work as well with a lot of individuals in that space. There's a lot of prop trading companies here that just need an NOC from VARA. Even we've seen some of the providers that initially thought, okay, they will get a spot license for trading or the brokerage. And then kind of when they actually understood the regulations, said, okay, we still want to be here, but we are not ready for that. Okay, we will just want to be have prop trading for our own funds for now until we kind of tap into that next market. And also a lot of holding companies related to different structures. And I would say I've seen a lot of startups coming to the VARA directly is in the tokenization project, but because of the nature of the project, which is very attractive now and something new. And I've seen quite a few of them are startups, not already established of a company somewhere else, because tokenization is quite new everywhere of real world assets. So in that space, I would say there are, and we will see stories on kind of that journey of startup to actually a licensed and
Fully
regulated success business, hopefully. But in general, like majority of the other VASPs in VARA has the public register. You can see it's more or less known names, or mid-sized VASPs.
And the UAE regulation overall, like we've talked about, there's non-regulated stuff that you could do within some free zones, and then you've got VARA, and then at the top you've got at the federal level you've got CMA. How are all of these aligning with one another? And can you, for example, could you go directly to the source at a federal level and get licensed there?
Yes,
you can.
You can go direct to CMA and start the licensing process with them. You don't have to go via a CSP, or you can go direct.
Okay.
That's the same with VARA. You can go direct to VARA. You don't have to have a consultant or a lawyer or regulatory expert. You can go direct if you know what you're doing. And there are some VAS that have great in-house skills, so they're able to go direct. How are they aligned? Okay. Free zones are very well aligned, purely and simply because free zones are there to give you your commercial license. There are some free zones that are better versed with VARA and have a very good, clear understanding of how VARA works. And you'll see they do like joint events and things like that. We see often DMCC hosting VARA, and you can see there's that real alignment. So there's clear definition on what's a business activity and what's a regulated activity. From a emirate level and a federal level, there's becoming more alignment. I really do think CMA, the new regulations that have come out from CMA, really does align quite well with VARA. I think there's a lot more alignment on what VARA is mandated to do and what CMA are doing. They're very clear. We don't regulate to buy virtual assets.
Okay.
Right? VARA does that.
Okay.
And I think that's a lot clearer now. But I think we talked on this earlier about it's very early days when something new is formed. So like when VARA was formed, there was, like we both said, uncertainty, questions, curiosity. What is this? How does it? I think at the moment the CMA announcement is very new.
Mm.
So what that truly means and how it's
Got to give it time to play out, basically.
Yeah. But what is very clear is that alignment is now there more than ever. Yes, there was a period when VARA regulations were out, and then the CMA at that point, it was not yet
it was
SCA,
ESCA.
ESCA, in that point also published their regulation. And there was a question mark, especially on the 50 VAS that were already through that MVP stage. How would that affect them?
Yeah.
Would they need to also obtain a license with ESCA and with VARA now? But it was very quickly clarified that ESCA has delegated authority to VARA for the Emirates of Dubai. And if you are regulated with VARA, that means you're regulated with ESCA as far as the regulation. And we've seen that it's very common. Of course, VARA has to align with ESCA, now CMA, which is the internal alignment. But from the point of perspective of a customer and a client, they need to obtain one license. That might be now different with regulation. We'll see when we analyze it more when it comes to tokenization space, because there will be parts with CMA and VARA. But I think they did a kind of great job there. And it's always, when we see in UAE any challenging time, they come out of it with more regulation and alignment.
Yeah.
So that's what we've seen here, from central bank to VARA, CMA. They are quite, I think, on the same page and working together with the same goal. They all know the majority of us are in Dubai, but they are now just making sure that aligns across border. And if you want to be in Abu Dhabi, and we've seen applications, you then go with CMA now almost on similar requirements.
And with this alignment and kind of all these changes that have emerged, who do you think that really opens the market up to now?
I think it's still going to be your larger global medium-sized VASPs.
Yeah.
Your smaller ones that have been a startup somewhere else and perhaps are now opening their second, like a subsidiary in the region. I still think it's very much for them. There's always been this discussion around a sandbox, something for the startups, the true startups. And we've not really seen that pilot come to life in this journey of digital assets yet. There's been pilots. I know there have been pilots. So, for example, when the Category 1 issuance derivatives, there were pilots run for these kind of programs, but we haven't seen a true sandbox for digital assets in the region. And I think that is what's missing right now for the startups.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that right now, if you are a true startup that wants to get regulated, I honestly I don't think that UAE and VARA would be your first choice. But it depends on and it costs. I think it all will come to the cost.
There was when VARA released rulebook version 2, there was almost like a, I don't know if I say buddy system sounds too casual, where a VASP could, an already licensed VASP could sponsor a non-licensed VASP.
Interesting
but you
concept.
are giving a lot of there's a chunk of equity because they are essentially responsible. They're overseeing. They've got to have that corporate. They've got to have that responsibility for you. So they've got to share a stake in it. And I don't know. Today, I don't think anybody is licensed.
I haven't seen
like
that.
We haven't seen that use case yet.
Yeah.
But when we've explored it for clients, and it was definitely one of the hot topics when version 2 of the VARA rulebooks came out, but we haven't seen anybody take that step forward.
Yeah. It could be interesting for projects that actually do need funding anyway, and then find it aligned with a big player.
Yeah.
But they are part of that project and the big player is interested. So it could be that collaboration that could be interesting. And then they can increase the value of that project by being licensed through the bigger player, and kind of is a win-win situation if it all aligns. But as I said, it wasn't like a big take on that. We've seen many VAS contacting already licensed VAS, going through the directory and saying, okay, can I be licensed through you, right? Can you host me?
Basically, yeah.
Can you be my big
Guidance.
brother?
Yeah. But I think that probably goes back to what you said there about people wanting to like own the space or be seen as the best, right? Like, maybe just to finish off this conversation today, what lessons from throughout this experience do you think has really stood out? Like, have we seen any attempts and failures, and what came off of the back of that in terms of learnings?
During my time at VARA, I think the industry learning, one of the biggest ones was FTX. It really shook things up. We were working with the FTX team that were getting licensed here in the UAE, so the UAE team, and to see it impact them directly. Like, these are people that had moved a location for their job. They were 2-3 weeks in. There's that level of impact. Like, they have no job, basically, because of the situation globally has impacted the UAE. Then you have the global impact. And then the case obviously was very public. It was all very public what kind of they were judged on and what the decisions were. That was a big learning. Even as a regulator, it paused for a moment. I wouldn't say a moment, genuinely paused. Went back to VASPs, asked more questions, and had an impact on the regs that we see out there today. Yeah. So there was a lot of learning from a regulator point of view. Personally, there was a lot of learning in that this is a very volatile industry, and can really, it will change. And I've always had the saying of it's a 24/7 industry. It doesn't switch off. Like, the market's closed, you get a weekend, you don't get a weekend. Yeah. It is 24/7. And things can change, not within 24 hours, they can change minute to minute. I think it was just the reality of how volatile the industry still is at that time. I think it's getting better, but I still think there's, things can change in the blink of an eye. Markets, different scams. Unfortunately, there is still a number of scams that take place, tokens that are not regulated, and there's a lot of volatility over time. Yeah. It will hopefully settle and mature, but there's definitely a air of caution.
Yeah. And any advice, maybe, Zana, from your point of view for, like a team that deals with businesses like continuity and maintenance, but also those like initial inquiries about setting this up? Maybe, well, either of you can answer this. Something to think about, like if this is a space that you want to enter into.
I'll just kind of add on what Manpreet said. I think with FTX, it was really marketed as a crypto failure, like of the industry. But I think what contributed actually the most, and I'm not an expert, was actually governance failure. Yeah. And a lot of uncontrolled decision making and unsupervised, and kind of the areas where VARA actually now
are
very strong and focuses is that independency on functions, supervision, control on how decisions are made within VASPs. And I've seen as well, not just within the FTX as well, one of the, I think, first exchanges that got initial approval from SRA in ADGN went also through bankruptcy because of kind of, again, that decisions around how you spend your budget.
And decision making.
Exactly. Like it's kind of, you can burn through the investment fairly quickly. Because it is, if you want to get regulated, you need to invest that. Like, the budget is very important. So having the right people there, having that governance and actually implementing that, having independent rules, having meds on the board. It's very important, kind of adds on to, it sounds very bureaucratic and it sounds kind of from the classical finance, everything that VAS don't want to be. But they need that now, and this maturity of also this ecosystem. Because a lot of people now trust virtual asset more than before. It is becoming a new finance. So because of that, we need
it has to be monitored.
Exactly.
It has to be,
and we've seen a lot of positive examples, a lot of innovation, a lot of good things, more good things than actually failures. But I think that initial stage, that kind of viewing on, like, if for you don't have enough in investment in this stage, is getting licensed here the right thing for you? Or like that potentially could affect, are you going to exist
Yeah,
in a
in
year.
6 to 12 months.
Exactly. It is also I come from a very kind of longevity, it's a classical sustainable industry where even we've seen like people in one company I've been in Sovereign almost 12 years, right? And for me, what was a shock, like people working in this industry, okay, they are here this year, but for the next year.
Yeah.
Like it is, but it's something you adapt to, kind of really.
It's very reactive.
Yes.
I think your question around do you pursue that path? I think there's a couple of things you have to factor. Cost, obviously, we've emphasized a lot because it is a costly process. It's not an impossible process. If you're sensible with your budget and everything, it is a process you can go through. So cost is one of them. Second is time, your time commitment. Because 9 times out of 10, anybody from the VASP is doing this on top of a day job, right? It might be that they've hired their compliance officer, MLRO, to focus on the application. But the CEO, the MD, the finance, they're 9 times out of 10 already doing a full-time job and this on top. And that is why then we find a lot of clients not outsource this, but they onboard someone like Neo Legal to do the application, because we then work with them as an extension of their team. So it's whether you can truly give it the time, because it does require time. Whether you hire somebody or not, like us, you work with us, there is still a responsibility. You need to know what's going in your policies and procedures. You need to be able to present that back. So we do actually do that. We get our VASPs to present it back to us. What have you put, who's who, what's what? We kind of do like a mini kind of mock interview. And are you committed to being in the UAE long term? Because this is not a short term thing. So whose boots are you putting on the ground, essentially?
Yeah.
And I think there's just some questions they have to ask themselves, because it's a different mindset. You're not going into a traditional, I'm just getting a financial license and that's it. You're going to be monitored, regulated, observed from the moment, not from when you get your license, but from the moment you
start that. Start the application.
And we do see personnel changes between the licensing process, because things will come up. There's background checks done. People underestimate the amount of due diligence done just on the individuals.
Yeah.
And I think what the actual what it makes more interesting, the regulations right now and getting regulated, because when we just started, there was a lot of questions about products and which products VARA will allow. Will you have derivatives, margin trading, and all of that? Again, VARA played it quite well. It was never a clear answer. But it was never their first kind of. They started with like just simple spot trading. Then for certain other VARs, there was like a bit of like a pilot, kind of like extension of a license, like exemption that you can trade derivatives in a certain amount of levels and all of that.
Yeah.
And now we're seeing finally the derivative framework coming out.
Yeah.
And knowing the market, like spot trading is fine, but when it comes to profit and like how the exchange will sustain themselves, it's about derivatives. So that's something that is now maybe for the new VAS coming in very interesting, because from the offset they know they can have derivatives as product. And of course it's not going to be easy. They need to provide all the regulation, everything to VARA, but like in your projections that you might come to kind of profitability faster. And you kind of get that engagement from the investors or parent company to invest more in getting regulated now. So that could be an interesting angle why some decisions that were on pause could be made now, because I know a lot of clients were hesitant, because if you don't have that, will you be of the lucky ones to get into pilot and inception, because you're not the great big player. So that's something I would say that is worth highlighting as well for everyone.
Okay, well, Manpreet, Zana, thank you so much for joining me today, taking me through the journey of virtual assets from essentially it starts where it is today. I'm sure we'll see lots more changes to come in even, the next 6 to 12 months. But yeah, thank you very much for joining me in studio today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thanks, Manpreet, for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you so much.